metrics meeting. I will be your host. I'm Dan Gary. I'm the lead product manager in the discovery department. So let's get going. Here's our agenda. I will be doing a welcome. Lewis will be doing a community update. I will be going through our quarterly report. And then Kevin will give you an update on analytics, and Abby and Aaron will give you an update on research, and then we'll take questions. So these are all of the people that we've welcomed. Round of applause, everyone. I won't read them all out, but we also have some anniversaries. Brian at 9 years, Thomas at 7, James 5, Garfield 4, Jonathan 4, Rosie 3, Andrew 3, and Manpreet at 2. Round of applause for them. Okay. So now I will hand it over to Lewis for the community update.
Thank you. No surprise, this is the month where we start and we lead with the community update with Wikimania, right? This is always going to be my personal favorite Wikimania picture, just because for those of you who weren't there, that's Rodin's Thinker in the back, and I've just always been that sort of nerd who loves the Thinker. It also has some strategic blurring of a copyrighted photo in the upper right hand, so you know, it's pretty Wikipedian in that sense too. You know, I posted some thoughts about Wikimania on my blog, and I had somebody saying, "Oh, there are just too many WMF staff," and I looked up the numbers when we got back, because I had promised that this community update is about things that are going on in you know, outside of the walls of 149 New Montgomery, right? And so Wikimania, you know, you talk to people there and you would think that the numbers are 60%, 70% WMF staff. And I wanted to get it out that Wikimania is a community event. It is less than 20% WMF staff. We send more people on scholarships and through committees like the FDC than we send staff. We had nearly over 600 community members and contributors there, in large part due to the funding and efforts of this organization. So this is a community event, and it's a social event too, which brings me, we could sit here all day long and tell stories about Wikimania, which would actually be sort of fun, and if anybody wants to do that over lunch. You know, we saw Garfield dancing as usual. My favorite story from this Wikimania, well, I got into an argument with somebody who said, well, Wikipedia is not a social network, right? This is a refrain. There's even an essay about it. There's a shortcut to it. And of course, there are some ways in which it's very true that Wikipedia is not a social network. However, Wikipedia is very much also a social network. We literally had a wiki wedding at Wikimania, for those of you who weren't there. Jimmy is not the groom. That's Avner. Avner is the lucky groom, but he didn't have the awesome outfit, so he doesn't get to be on the screen. That is Daria. They met at a meetup that Jan Bart was in Israel, and they met at a Jan Bart meetup. And so Jan Bart put together wiki vows as well for their, which are of course available under CC by SA. I'd be happy to share them with you. That did in fact include the phrase sickness or health, articles for deletion, or peer reviews. So if anybody tells you that Wikipedia is not a social network, you can tell them that people, and we've already seen Wiki Children, but this is just a wonderful, fun reminder for me out of the many hundreds of stories that we got out of Wikimania. The one other story I want to tell this month is very much an on-wiki thing. I wanted to welcome the Konkani language. This is a language of Western India. Primarily, it's the official language of the state that Goa is in, for those of you who are familiar with Goa. 7 million speakers. It's been in incubation for 9 years. So this has been a slow, steady process that's been a wonderful mix of all of the different ways that we grow communities. There's some amazing stories, and I urge you to take a look at the blog where some of these stories have been posted of individual volunteers who have been plugging away at this for years. There's also some wonderful support from our partners in India, CIS, who worked with the University of Goa to donate an existing encyclopedia, not just get it licensed properly, but get it scanned. The only encyclopedia in well, until now, the only encyclopedia in the Konkani language, and it's a small community, but it's a growing one, and we like to welcome them from coming out of incubation and into being a real encyclopedia, a real project. So it's really exciting. Congratulations to them if any of them are watching. And this, by the way, is the cover of the first page of that other encyclopedia that we then scanned and turned to the project. So that is all for the community update this month. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll go through our quarterly report. So this is our metrics scorecard. Updated for this quarter, you can see a lot of things lack baselines. For example, we don't have a Q3 read-up time. We now have a Q4 read-up time, so we're making baselines, and we'll figure these out. In particular, you can notice a decrease in read latency and write latency. Actually, fairly significant decrease in write latency. It's about 0.4 seconds. It's really good. Also, and this is of intrigue to me, is we've actually seen a decrease in new editors and an increase in active editors, which, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of research we can do on that to figure out what's happened there. Yeah, okay. And this is our successes, and this is by team. So the way that this works is teams set goals at the start of the quarter. They can set as many or as few goals as they like, fewer is better. And then report on their successes at the end. So generally, a success rate of about 75%. 75% hit and 25% miss is what is recommended. And there's a few odd things in here. Like, for example, talent and culture succeeded at everything that they tried to do. Terry, you need to set harder goals. More stretch goals. Yeah. And another thing is communications actually only got 1 out of the 5 goals. That's not actually a bad thing necessarily. That was as a result of reassessing the goals and realizing that they weren't right and then changing them. But, you know, the goals are locked in at the start, so that's reported. So that includes things like that, where it's more of an amber thing, but we use rather than a green or a red, but we use a binary scale. So as mentioned, yeah, about 74% success and 31% miss. So we're kind of at the sweet spot of 75%, around 75% of the goals actually being successful. And yeah, as mentioned, yellow goals are things which were intentionally revised or abandoned, marked as misses. Okay, and now I will hand it over to Kevin for the analytics update.
All right, thank you. My name is Kevin Leduc, and I am the manager of the analytics team. And I'm here to bring back some metrics in the metrics meetings. So just a little forward, the analytics team is responsible for building infrastructure that surfaces metrics that other teams can use. So I'll show some metrics from the readership, editing, and discovery teams. But each of these teams is responsible for defining the metrics, for analyzing them, and monitoring them over time. So for this meeting, I've selected just a sample of interesting metrics in each of these groups. So starting with the readership metrics, I'll state the obvious. The blue bars are page views using the desktop site. And over the last 3 months, they are trending down. Now, this is a seasonal thing. It tends to trend down in the summer, possibly because people are going on vacation and not at school. However, the drop this year is more significant than other years. And there are a lot of factors that contribute to this, so I don't have a single answer to why. However, the mobile site is relatively stable. And not only that, it bottomed out in June and it's already going back up. We're not at the point yet where they converge, right? Where mobile surpasses. These are global numbers. And I don't know if you can tell the tiny little yellow bar, that's the mobile apps. So this gives you a sense of the relative size. Most people are hitting the desktop side, and mobile is growing. So this is a little bit overwhelming. I will go into more detail here. I'll break it down simply. But this is a dashboard that the analytics team built for the editing team using requirements from James and Neil. So this is editing success. So when someone hits the edit button and makes an edit and hits save, call that a success. And there are many reasons why they might not get to a success. They may close the window, they may hit the back key, they change their minds, or there may be an error. But here we're trying to monitor the success rate. So we can actually look at the type of users. So people who have done over 1,000 edits, when they hit the save button, 65% of the time, they'll actually successfully save the edit. So that's nearly 2/3 of the time. For users who have only done 100 edits, when they're 59% of the time successful at saving their edit. Closer, right? And for people who've only done 5 edits, 50% of the time. And you can tell the more experienced a user is, the more likely he is to be successful at what he's doing. So first-time editors, 27%, anonymous editors, only 17%. Now, most are in the bottom half. That's why all edits, the average is a lot lower. For wiki text, for 1,000 edits, 63% of the time, we get a successful save. For 100+ edits, 55, for 5+, 47. So here it tracks pretty well what you get on the visual editor. But when you get to first edits and anonymous edits, the people are a lot less successful. I want to raise a caveat. Aaron is about to show the results of the A/B test. And keep in mind, that test was done to new editors who just created accounts. These are different sets of users. So you can't compare directly these numbers. Now for the discovery team. So this is a dashboard that was built by Oliver on the discovery team. And the top line, the green line, is the number of searches per day. So we get over 50 million searches every day. The red line are searches that return 0 results. We did not find anything. And it's about 1/4 of all our searches, about 25 million searches depending on the day. And so the discovery team set a goal. They decided that the number of 0 result searches is a key performance indicator. And they've set a goal to reduce that to about 12.5% of the total searches. So you can see they have the ways to go, but this dashboard lets them monitor their progress towards their goal. So a brief summary of what I just said. Page views are down on desktop globally. Edit attempts using the visual editor turn into a successful edit more often on visual editor than the wiki text editor. And the discovery team is trying to make search better. And to recap, the analytics team has built the infrastructure to help surface these metrics. And each vertical is responsible, using their product managers and their analysts is responsible for defining what metrics are important, what are the KPIs, and monitoring and moving those numbers. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. If anyone has any questions for Kevin, we'll take those at the end in the Q&A. So next up, we have a research update from Abby and from Aaron.
Hello, I'm Abby Ripstra, the lead of the design research team here at the foundation. And I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about the visual editor release and the work that we did support that. So when a big decision has to be made, something important has to be done, people get around a table and make it happen. Maybe this couple is making a big decision or something. They're at the table. And we have a group here called Team Practices Group, and they got us all around the table, all the teams that are concerned with visual edit release. So Joel is on that team, and he got us all around the table, and so every team would have a say and a seat at the table. And these are all the teams that got a seat at the table, that we were working together to make sure that this would be a successful release. It was all our primary goal for all of us. So Joel is our guide, and he gathered us all around, and he supported us to build a new structure for this release. And so all of us had, all the teams had the ability to block or not during the process as we move forward. And we all had a voice and a say, and I think this helped us have better alignment and a broader collaboration. So everyone is really focused on the end result. So we also collaboratively decided the scope of this release, the process that we were going to do to make this release happen, and also the success criteria. And for the scope, we decided it was good to focus on basic editing tasks for new editors who will not disrupt current Wikipedians. So just talk a little bit about the process there, and now I'm going to go into how research participated. So before all getting around the table, the design research team did general exploratory research about brand new editors and people just new to editing. We spoke with, we did interviews and observations. We spoke with 16 people for about an hour each. We got to see about 8 people doing their first edit for the first time and observe what they did and learn from them. So people are the experts on their experience, so we wanted to learn directly from them about what it's like to be brand new in editing Wikipedia. This is, I'll talk more about this in another time, but this helped to inform us. We also ran a survey to learn, to validate what we thought were the top basic tasks. We got about over 700 responses from experienced editors, casual editors, and new editors, not brand new editors. So, and everyone said the same thing, pretty much: adding text, adding a sentence, adding an internal or external link, add a reference or a citation, and then formatting that text. So we also wanted to do some evaluative research to test and see how people were able to do these tasks in Visual Editor. So we did that. These are the tasks we test. We've expanded those tasks a little bit because you have to be able to get into the editor to do the edits. You have to be able to know to save to make it a successful save. So we tested all these things: adding text, making text bold and italicized. We even tested creating a new subsection, adding a citation, editing a citation, links, and external and internal links. So most of the tasks passed this test, which was great. We were very happy to see this, but 3 of the tasks did not pass the test, which creating a new subsection, which wasn't part of those 5 basic tasks anyway, so we're thinking maybe that's okay to deal with later in another release. And also adding a citation was very difficult for people, as well as adding an internal link. So the team had to have a discussion, like, of these things that failed, what do we need to fix before we run the A/B test, which Aaron's going to talk about in a second. I thought we should fix both the link inspector and the citations dialog, but the team disagreed with me. And so we sat down and we had a conversation. We discussed it, hashed it out, and we decided that for new editors to be successful and not cause disruption to current Wikipedians, like cause more work, we definitely needed to fix the citations dialog. But link inspector was less of a problem there, that we would it wouldn't cause big differences. So to fix that, the citations dialog, which is the one thing we decided to fix before going to AB, we paused. We said, okay, let's pause so we can do some design iteration and do another validation, usability testing to make sure what we change will actually work. So we did some design iteration. We changed the icon to make it more clear where to go to do a citation. The interaction was more smoothed out. We put tabs in the link in the oh, this is backwards. Actually, it's the slide is wrong. It switched the before and after. Sorry, fix that later. Anyway, we changed the icon and the interaction. We put tabs on the link inspector so people could choose between automatic, manual, and reuse. So then we tested it again, and all these it passed. People were able to more easily add a citation. Yay! Yeah, and so we added a few things, like we wanted to make sure people also understood those tabs in the link in the citation and dialogue to make sure they knew what automatic, manual, and reuse was, and we confirmed that yes, everybody did directly understand that. So that was great, and then we were unblocked for moving forward to the A/B test. So Aaron will talk about that now. So you're on, Aaron.
Thanks, Abby. Regretfully, I can't switch between my slides really quick, so you don't get to see my face. But I'm Aaron Halfaker. I'm a senior research scientist on the research team. And my job in working with the visual editor team and this process was to find out, now that we knew that visual editor worked in the lab, how did it work in the field? When we actually deployed a controlled experiment on Wikipedia, what sort of things would be affected? And so we had two hypotheses that I thought were really important to check. One of them, which is very obvious, it's the point of visual editor, the idea that more newcomers will contribute productively. And of course, this assumes that the technical literacy that's required to write markup is a limitation. So if we remove that limitation, people will do more. The next hypothesis that I thought was really important, because it was brought up quite regularly, is that there will be way more damage. So the idea is that if we think about the people who can edit with wiki text editor, they're sort of the intersection of good potential new editors and technically literate people who might figure out markup. The idea is that vandals don't overlap with technically literate people as much as good new editors do, so having that restriction of technical literacy might reduce the amount of vandals or something like that. Anyway, so this is something that we wanted to look into. We wanted to know, are newcomers going to create more damage if we release visual editor? So we ran an experiment. This experiment took 2 weeks. In the first week, we randomly bucketed new users into experimental conditions. One of those conditions had visual editor turned on and available by default. The other condition had the current state of Wikipedia where visual editor is not turned on by default. And by and large, the two sets of users in these groups stuck with the state that they were. You could enable or disable visual editor if you wanted to, but people tend to stick with defaults. We needed the second week because I wanted to observe all of these newcomers for an entire week to understand how they were burdening other Wikipedians and how productive they were. And so it turns out that in order to observe each newcomer for that week, I can observe the first newcomer who joined within the bucketing week, but the last newcomer who joins within that first week, I need a whole second week to observe their activity in Wikipedia. Okay, so what do we find? Well, first, when we looked at productivity, one of the key metrics that we looked at were the number of productive edits. These are edits to articles that are not reverted. And we found no significance here. There wasn't really a difference between the newcomers who had visual editor turned on by default and the newcomers who did not have visual editor turned on by default. And so we actually looked at a lot of different measures too. We were curious, well, maybe they're getting reverted, but they're still making article edits. Again, we saw no significance there. We looked at the number of editing sessions. This is the number of times that an editor will come back to Wikipedia in that first week. No significance there. And we also looked at the time spent editing. This is the time spent within an editing session on Wikipedia. And again, we found no significance. So the conclusion here is that we really saw no major effect on productivity. Visual editor does not seem to make it easier or harder to productively contribute to Wikipedia, at least as far as newcomers will contribute productively. Okay, second hypothesis, that we'll see more damage with visual editor. So there were two things that we looked at here. One was the rate at which newcomers get blocked for vandalism. And we looked at this a lot of different ways. We, again, couldn't find any significant difference here. The differences were so minuscule, the p-values were incredibly high. It was nothing really major was happening here. However, we also looked at the rate at which newcomers make edits that will need to eventually be reverted. And we did find a significant effect here. It's really, really small. But it was something that jumped out of the data as something that's probably real, and a little bit difficult for us to understand. So basically what we found is that it seems like if we were to deploy visual editor, outside of the experiment, we should expect a slight reduction in the amount of damage that newcomers are causing in the wiki. This is not the kind of effect that people who are doing recent changes patrolling are likely to notice, but it's good to know that damage is definitely not going to go up. And so the last thing that I want to tell you is this Venn diagram, this idea that when we make editing easier, we're going to get more vandals. It seems to be wrong, incredibly wrong. So let's not think that way anymore. Thank you. Oh, and of course, our study is documented on Meta. If you want to go read more and you can read a link really fast, this is the link you want to go to on Meta.
Hey, thank you, Aaron. So now we have time for the Q&A. If anyone has any questions for any of the presenters, I'd like to invite the presenters back up to the front so that we can answer those questions. You can ask questions on IRC. If you're in the office, you can go and stand by the microphone for questions, and we'll take them. Presenters.
You look like such an asshole. Jesus, can I just see? Okay, here it is. All right. I have a question for Aaron. I'm a visual editor user, love it. That's how I make all my edits. But it looks like with at least this test population, there's no difference, which undermines our entire case for ever building it. Is that accurate, or how are we thinking about it, given that we're seeing no significance? I personally love the product and use it, but do we need larger tests for this? Is there a reason to invest money in this product?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I didn't have. It's a really good question. I think that you're right. I think it is better. Like, the lab study doesn't lie. People did find it easier to use visual editor to edit. This is something that I didn't have much time during this presentation to get into. But we recently had a research showcase where I dug into this a lot, and I talked about the entry barriers that exist in people getting to Wikipedia, editing productively, sticking around. What I think is happening here is that we effectively took down an important entry barrier to Wikipedia around technical literacy. However, there are other very large barriers to sticking around in Wikipedia, a lot of them to do with your social experience and your own motivation. These are things that visual editor don't touch, but we need to solve them both. If we were to solve either of them independently, it would look like we weren't having a very big effect. And so I think that's why we're not seeing a big effect on newcomer productivity here, but we were seeing better usability in the lab. If you want to learn more about this, I'd love to talk more about this. And I have this presentation too, which is on YouTube, if not on Commons already, that I can point you to. I'll throw that into the office IRC chat room.
James.
Green. Hurrah. So Matt Flashen asked you, Dan, and the Discovery team at large, is there a plan to work on precision in the search results rather than merely returning some results? So like the percentage of results that are actually relevant to the query.
Absolutely. And so if you actually look at our dashboards, if you go to searchdata.wmflabs.org, you can see that we've actually got 4 KPIs. One of them is marked as work in progress, and we don't actually have any data on it. That's our search satisfaction. In other words, our search relevance. We're still implementing a schema that will be able to measure how relevant the results are to people. We're using some other metrics as an approximation right now, like whether the user clicks on a result, but sometimes the user won't know whether it's the right result until they've clicked on it. So it's a bit misleading to decide that someone clicking on it necessarily means that that's what they wanted. We've actually deployed that schema to production to measure this, but we didn't have enough data. So we've made it so that the sampling rate will get more people. The sampling rate was very small. It's still very small, but we have a lot of users. So once we've got that metric, then we can actually figure out like a more detailed way of measuring satisfaction. That's definitely what we want to focus on. But certainly, if users are typing in queries and getting nothing, they are being served irrelevant results because we're not serving them any results. So we're using that as our first task towards search relevance. Okay. Next question. S?
Yeah, I guess this is for Aaron as well. Kind of the same thing as Anna asked or comment about. Have we thought about different ways of, I mean, we don't want to tailor our research questions so they sort of give us the answers we want, like how many edits have citations. But I mean, it seems like, you know, is there are there other ways to measure sort of how good edits are? I mean, adding a citation is like a zillion times easier. So, you know, I wonder how we should be sort of measuring edit success.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, S. So in this case, we were using this productive edit measure because it's very non-specific, yet it's something that is sort of uniformly desirable, and it has like a lot of history in the research literature and our use at the foundation, so we knew what to expect out of it. However, I've been talking to the editing team, and in my last conversation with them about what metrics they should be observing, I made that exact point about looking at citation rates because they're targeting citations. Another one that I was considering is with the work that Abby's been pushing for around link inspector. We think that that'll make it easier for people to make links that don't go to disambiguation pages, they go to the appropriate page, and that's something that I'd like to look at too. And so I think for this experiment, it was good that we had sort of a big general measure that wiki text and visual editor can compete on fair ground on. But as we're designing things and then testing them out in the field, we can ask more specific questions, and we should.
Hey, question from IRC, James?
Hi, again for Discovery, was surprised. Layla said 50 million searches a day seems very low. That equates to 1.3 searches per unique reader per month. Where is our data right? Where are they searching?
So there are actually a variety of different data sources that there's a load of different APIs, and that doesn't necessarily reflect every way that people search on Wikipedia. For example, there's things like language searching and other APIs. So, but we can investigate that. That does seem very low.
Related question about search, and somebody comes to our site from other well-known search provider. In the referral, does it show what terms they use to search to get to that end page?
I don't believe it does, but Google Webmaster Tools does have information on what search terms people are. So it's not in the referrer, but I do believe we have that information.
So do we have a way to reverse engineer what search terms should be?
We don't have a way of doing that, and it would be interesting to explore. Yeah, there would be a variety of different ways that we would do that. So I don't know how we would do it, but yeah, it definitely sounds interesting.
One follow is, do we do spelling typo search, classic search, some search?
Yes, we do. However, the search box that a lot of people are familiar with, the one that's like if you're reading an article, the search box at the top right is actually just a prefix search. It takes what you've typed in and looks for other article titles. That doesn't actually have spelling detection. It's a limitation of the technology. That technology is primarily designed to be fast rather than to like return exactly the right thing. If you use full text search, so if you type like hit containing if you search for something in the box, and at the bottom there's a result there that says containing, and then it has your search query in it. If you click on that, it runs it through the full text search, and that has actually a more broad thing. It gives you suggestions based on what it thinks you want. So it detects typos, but it also detects other things.
Simple hack: return 0 results, then do the search.
Yeah. There may be performance limitations to doing that, and also that would actually mean then that the box starts returning. Like users actually now have an expectation about the way that search box works, that they're searching for titles. There's a risk that we will actually confuse people by then taking results from a different set. It's very possible for full text search to give you a list of results that don't have the word that you search for in the title if it's a prominent word. But there are ways that we can solve that problem by changing the UX and making it more obvious that that's what's happening. Right, thank you. James.
Question from Dario. Just to clarify, are we disambiguating between searches that retrieve 0 results because there's literally no match versus searches that retrieve nothing because of issues with our search engine? Because that plot doesn't seem to reflect the difference between those.
So there's no straightforward answer to that question. So I'll break it down into parts. Is the graph that was shown doing that disambiguation? No. Are we trying to do that disambiguation? Yes. So I'll actually be giving a talk at the end of the month that will have more information on this. So I won't give too much away. I want to keep people excited. But like for example, there's an app called a web app called Legato, and you can actually type a DOI into it, and it tells you whether that DOI is cited anywhere on Wikipedia. And the vast majority of DOIs that people type in don't actually have any citations anywhere. So giving them nothing is the correct response. And that accounts for around 20% of our queries that give 0 results. So that means that there's at least a fifth of people that we're giving nothing, that we should be giving nothing. And we didn't know that when we started. And we're learning more of these now. We've also found bugs elsewhere in the software, both like in our apps and on our website, and bugs in other people's software where they like almost had something that would work, but not quite because of the formatting. So we're exploring that, and we're reaching out to people and telling them. Like in the case of the Legato, there's not really an awful lot of point reaching out to them because it's actually working properly as intended, and they're getting what they want from us. So I don't know what we would say to them other than thanks, and thanks for using Wikipedia. Yeah, we're building that understanding, and I will send Dario and anyone else who's interested a link of the research that we've done that actually breaks it down and like points to different prominent consumers. Okay, any final questions anyone wants to ask? No questions in IRC? Okay, then I think we're finished here. Thank you. And lunch is one of my favorites, although I can't claim to have organized it, but I'm still pleased. The limon rotisserie, Peruvian food, yes. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers for the talks that they've done, and the administration staff, front desk, IT for making this metrics meeting run smoothly. Thank you.